Welcome to the Introspections podcast, episode 4. Introspections is here to help you cultivate success from within by helping you become aware and identify what success looks like for you as an individual. My guest today is an author, a TEDx speaker, a clinical psychologist, a psychiatrist. She studied medicine and surgery. She's got many different accolades when it comes to the medical field, specifically relating to mental health. She's also the managing partner of Renaissance, an organization that provides mental health and wellness services to corporates and individuals. She's won the ABSA Woman of the Year Award in 2022. She's also won the Stanbic Bank Woman of the Year Award in 2019. She's done various corporate engagements. She's spoken at various universities and is an expert in the space. She is Dr. Maria Akani, and today she's here to talk to us about How Can I Make the Pain Go Away? This is a book that she's recently authored where she teaches people how to identify and manage pain and how to use that for personal success. Please subscribe and follow the YouTube channel for instructions on how you can stand a chance to win this book. Welcome to the Introspections episode 4. Dr. Maria Akani, welcome to the Introspections podcast. Pleasure to have you with me today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and I'm glad to be here.
Okay, awesome. In my research for today's episode, I came across some interesting things concerning what you've done. You've been named as the Woman of the Year by Stanbic Bank in the past. What does it mean to be you as you are now? Like, what does your life look like?
Pretty ordinary, if you ask. I work, and I think I do a lot of transformational work with other people, so I enjoy that. I enjoy watching what happens to people before, walking the journey with people, and making sure people are not alone during times when they're vulnerable. And I also enjoy being a friend, being a parent, being a sibling. I enjoy regular things.
I'm assuming?
No. I'm the third of four siblings.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. You talking about how you love to be there for people is something that I also noticed. I did some, in my research, I saw that your clients had said some things about you that I think I resonated to, in terms of how you help them go through different situations. Like we were talking about before we started filming, dealing with anxiety and things like that. So for me, those were some of the motivations behind starting this podcast. That's something I had to deal with. And as I got better at managing that, I thought, let me see if I can create a platform where people can openly have these conversations. You also mentioned in your TED talk that these conversations were sensitive in our society. They're more seen as things that are prominent in the West, right? But I guess in the recent past, we've seen mental health issues become more prevalent in a society where they're looked down on a certain way. Where does that come from for you as a person, the desire to want to help people? Like, what drives that motivation?
I think it's a number of things. I think it's firstly being gifted. I'd like to think that I'm gifted. And I say that because, one person from my secondary school days said to me, you're the one that could always have the difficult conversations. Okay. So I obviously didn't know that at the time when I was growing up, but people would have difficult conversations with me. They would share their most vulnerable aspects with me. And at the time, I was just being a friend. And then later, I did think about, doing some counseling, but I didn't actually think you could make a profession out of it. So it was one of those things that I would do. And then I also, because I really like to help people, thought about doing medicine. So took that route as well. So I think part of it comes from it being an area of strength. Like I seem to be at that place where I can anticipate people's needs and also having that, apart from having that ability to anticipate people's needs, to actually feel to an extent that it bothers me, that I'm not doing something about it. I need to find something that I can do about it. So I think that's where it comes from.
Okay. I noticed, like, even in your book, which we'll talk about later, some of the early dedications are to your patients. I think even that is a testament to your love for helping people, and that's so rare. As a clinical psychologist, how do you manage between being a clinical psychologist, being like it's part of your natural gift, and outside in your personal relationships? Like, do your
Do I
friends say
shrink
like
my
you
friends?
yeah, like, do you psychoanalyze them? Do they like, or is that a hat that you have, is that a button that you have to turn off when you're socializing?
Well, a few of my friends have accused me, and I would say accused because I don't believe that that I was doing that. But I think that one of the things that has helped is, doing training. Training helps you to start learning boundaries, learning ethics, learning those things. And I've had a lot of struggles with friends of mine who say, you're really good at this and I want you to counsel me. I'd like to be your client. And I try to tell them that, look, I can't do this. You're my friend. And they're like, no, but we trust you. We know you're good at this. And then I get into this space where it's really awkward because I can't do my job well because we have another relationship.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to explain, but it sounds as if I'm being selfish or I'm just not like
Willing.
yes. And the way any profession works, I think that there are boundaries within which you're supposed to keep so that you can be the best version of it. You can optimize. And those things are compromised when you
Mix the two.
But it's kind of hard for people to understand that. So I think I do have those boundaries. And I see those things sometimes, like if I'm talking to my sister and she says something and then, she'll say something, she'll be telling me something, and then maybe I just make a comment. Then she'll be like, oh yeah, you're a doctor, right? So I think that I relate in such a way that people can actually forget that this is my profession. So I think I do try to keep my boundaries. It's also exhausting to try and shrink
people
all the time. It's
Okay.
like working all the time. So you need to switch off and be yourself, be off guard, and be off duty.
Like, you know what? I'm not going to comment on this guy's problems. I'll just let it go.
Yes.
Okay. Would you say, in your experience, that a lot of people's your book is called How to Make the Pain Go Away? Would you say, based on the title, it's clear that a lot of people's pain, like I mentioned earlier, is becoming more prominent now? Would you say that a lot of it is embedded in people's upbringing, or it's a good balance between people experiencing things that cause them pain in adulthood? Or would you say that a lot of it starts from early childhood and then we just carry it as we get older?
I'm not sure how to do the percentage thing because nobody is a clean slate once they're an adult. I don't know if it makes sense. Like, we all have a past, which has a bearing on how we manage adulthood. As to how much it weighs depends on how much you went through or what you went through, and for different people. So, for example, if I'm bitten by a dog today, and I deal with it and go on to recover. Maybe I then end up being very fearful of dogs, or maybe I don't. But if as a child, I saw someone who was attacked by a dog and hurt really badly, and then I grow up and then I'm bitten by a dog, I think that is different, right? How I deal with it. But it may not necessarily mean that you experience a lot of trauma. Maybe the rest of your life was nice. It's just that you saw someone who was bitten by a dog, and then you were then bitten by a dog. Okay?
Right.
So others, it's the rest of their lives was really murky. And then this one aspect didn't happen to them. So the way they deal with it is different. I don't know if it makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the proportion is different. I don't think we can just weigh it like that. However, we have a lot of studies that have shown that people who've experienced a lot of adverse reactions and maladjustments as children have more problems in adulthood dealing with their difficulties.
And what do these problems generally look like? Let's say some people are not aware of what's going on inside them, right? Maybe they've repressed their trauma. How do these start to show up? Let's say maybe they're in a stressful environment or any environment that triggers them. How would these show up? And I know that's very general, but I want to lead it to the pain conversation. Just like, how do most people that come to you for help, what are these symptoms that push them towards seeking counseling or help?
They're varied. So maybe I can start with physical symptoms. So some will come because they've been referred to the doctor. They have a persistent headache, or painkillers don't work. And the person, even if they give them this painkiller, they seem to get worse. Some of them are able to tell that actually the headache seems to come when we're about to have a board meeting.
Yeah.
And then it just does not stop. So you can see the person, maybe it's related to anxiety, some trauma they experienced or something, and some of them is just persistent headache. Some it's things like insomnia, some it's bowel habits, this discomfort that they have, what they call irritable bowel syndrome, very related to anxiety disorders and psychological problems. Just some non-specific physical symptoms. Others, it's relational problems that you see. You find that a person can't seem to sustain a deep relationship or a good relationship, and they come and see you because, I don't know, is there something wrong with me? Yes, is there something wrong with me? Why can't I bond? What's going on? I'm already feeling anxious in this relationship. I'm already feeling this way, that way. With some, it's anger management problems that you see that, okay, this person has this anger, which we can't understand where it's coming from. Others, it's compulsive habits. They may be drinking a lot, gambling a lot, spending so much money, having so much sex, just different kind of things. They really, really look different. Yes.
Okay. So what I'm trying to do with this podcast is help young executives in high positions to manage success from within. And the higher up you go the corporate ladder, the more stressful it becomes. That's just the natural composite of being a leader. I think you have to be able to manage it. So I would like your assistance in helping people to more like have tools or frameworks that they can start to realize what's going on inside them. What does that look like? At what point I'm an individual, right? And maybe I'm feeling some internal discomfort. What are some of the things that can make me say, you know what, this isn't just a bad day, or I've been feeling like this for a while. I need to seek out external help. At what point can someone start to see like, okay, you know what, I think this is a bit out of the ordinary. I need to seek help early on. What can someone notice in themselves too?
So sometimes it's just the basic things I spoke about, sleep disturbances, eating disturbances, social problems.
Why does sleep affect our mental health so much? Like our sleep patterns?
Both. Sleep affects our mental health affects
sleep. Okay, they're interrelated.
Yes, they're interrelated. Well, one thing you must know about sleep is that, like, maybe let me give an example. You have a laptop there. When you open so many windows, what happens?
It starts becoming slow.
It's becoming slow, right? And sometimes even when you try to switch them off, it doesn't work until you switch off the computer.
You restart it.
Yes, and then after you restart it, then everything starts to, and that's how our bodies work as well.
Okay,
our minds are working all the time. Like all the time. And when I try to explain this to people, sometimes they think I'm exaggerating, but like, even when you think you're not thinking, your mind is working. Yes, because constantly, everything is working. Whether you want to scratch here, your brain has to tell you there's an itch
there.
Even for me to just do my expressions, I have to be coordinated between what I'm thinking and what my hands are doing. For me to sit up like this in posture. And so the brain is working all the time for as long as you're awake. So when you sleep, it's still working because it's controlling other parts of it, but it's like hibernating. So that's the time when you can refresh. That's the time when you can reset. That's the time, even healing and recovery of your body, your physical body, like wound healing, any healing requires sleep. That's why people prescribe bed rest.
It, right?
Yeah. So
it's not just to make your boss give you time off.
No. You're giving time and energy for the body to restore itself. Okay. So again, when your mental state is not okay, it's hard for your brain to rest,
to unwind,
because it's now working overboard to try and reset. And so your sleep gets affected.
Right.
And that's why one of the treatments we do when a person is very anxious is just sedate somebody. Like, sedate them. A person is very anxious, acute, they're confused, they can't sedate them. Like, just slow them down a little so that the system can restart.
In the corporate world, we're always put in a position to it's made to seem like a requirement, but from my personal experience, I've come to discover it's not as it's put out, and that's multitasking. I think it's one of the things that can contribute to someone's feeling mentally overloaded. And the analogy you gave about having many tabs open for me puts that out perfectly. How would you advise, like if someone is your patient and maybe they're telling you a story and you realize maybe they're taking on too much and that's what's causing them, what are some of the things you'd encourage them to like start to wind down? Because maybe they may feel everything they're doing is very important, right? I'm sure maybe this is something you may resonate with, if not.
Yes. And I guess we get to do a lot of that when we now start on the coaching perspective. What do you really absolutely need to do? You, first of all, no one else, because some things can be delegated. Like, recently I had a chat with a young doctor and she was saying she was feeling really overwhelmed. She has 2 kids. She has all these things to manage. She was trying to do her postgraduate. I think she was trying to do her postgraduate at the same time and taking care of all these things. And, one of the things that we discussed was, what can you do? Only you, what you can't outsource. She said, okay, breastfeeding. So,
well,
breastfeeding. So that's one of the things you can't outsource. What else can you do? I can't outsource studying. Okay, that's something you can't outsource. I can't outsource my relationship with my husband. So we think about those primary things you can't outsource. Then we think about, how can you be supported in every other thing? And it becomes really controversial because sometimes some of the things that come in is things like cooking. And there's a perspective about how you should cook for your husband all the time and things like that. But if you're at a point where you have so many things that are competing for your interest and survival, really, then you have to think about the things that only you can do. Yeah, and that means outsourcing a lot of things. Sometimes washing, sometimes picking up kids from school, sometimes doing, all these little things that anyone else can do. Gardening, buying vegetables instead of trying to do your own garden, all those things. And so you have to think about those things. And even streamlining when it comes to friendships and social commitments, because sometimes those can also pull a person apart. So it's really coming to that term. And I think with mental illnesses, it's a little complex because people don't recognize that you're sick. So if you say, I'm on bed rest, I can't do social functions, just say, but you're not sick. They can't see that you're sick. But it's you being, so for me, it's been a lot of explaining to the client that it's what's important to you. It's you being able to see that I cannot be stretched in this boundary. It's you being able to see that no is a complete sentence.
Okay. My next question is a bit personal. So you don't have to give specifics, but have you also created that kind of a safe space for your place, like for yourself in situations where you find yourself maybe stressed, overwhelmed? Like, do you have those support systems? Like maybe you talk to people you work with in the practice and they Is that something you need, or you have self-coaching tools that you take yourself through?
No. I think that one of the tricky parts about, and I say this, like one of the tricky parts about mental illness is that your brain plays tricks on you.
How so?
Well, sometimes it's about the way you think, it's your perspective, it's how you see things. So you can't help yourself because you are the one who can't see
problem.
properly. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
You're the one. So how are you going to help yourself?
Right.
So in dealing with that, you need an outside perspective. Okay. So I'm not ashamed to see that I've had therapy at several times in my life. I've actually gone ahead, seen professionals and paid for therapy for myself. Apart from that, I have a lot of accountability relationships.
Okay.
I have friendships that are close that have to do with me and running the business and things like that. I have friendships that are close that have to do with me running family and dealing with parenting and things like that. So those are two aspects of my life that I think are very important that I look at. But apart from that, I also have a couple of friends who are also therapists who do the kind of work I do, and we're able to share, like, what challenges are you facing in this? What kind of So I think I invest heavily in my social support system.
And one thing I like the most about your work in general is that you are really creating a space where it's safe for people to come out and say, you know what, I went out and I sought help. I think that's so important. Because there's a lot of stigma. Now things are changing, but there's a lot of stigma. In an ideal world, what would a place where, like, we do not stigmatize mental health issues, what does that look like for you? Like, is it we have a lot of health facilities in the communities, like, or many radio shows? How can we start that process? Because I feel it's very important. For people that want to be successful, and also for people that are struggling trying to get to the next best place.
So all those that you mentioned, but I guess on a different level. So firstly, it's being able to go to a clinic and say, I'm feeling sad, and somebody actually takes you seriously. I mean,
not just seeking attention.
Yeah, we went to a couple of, trying to understand how people do their service provision, went to a couple of places where we had people do some mystery shopping. And there were situations where somebody goes and says, I'm feeling sad. I had a breakup, and the person just laughs, like, oh, men are like that. Just like, this is a clinician, and they just really told somebody that, and they expect them to go. I won't say anything about that. But so this is a person who says, I haven't been sleeping. They're not trying to pretend they have a headache. They have actually said, I'm hurting. And they go to the clinic, and the clinic is just thinking, like, this is no place for you. So where is the right place for this person to go, So I look forward to a time when people will look at health holistically. And I can go to the clinic and say, I'm actually thinking about killing myself. I would like you to help me. And they will know exactly what to do. They will know how to help me. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's one. But secondly, I look forward to a time when somebody will be able to go to work and say, I'm not doing well. I'm going through a divorce. I can't work. And they'll be given days off. You understand? Yeah, because I see people who get a day off for a cold, for 2 days, 3 days, the doctor gives them. And then you have a person who's undergoing terrible marital conflict. Their BP is high, but sometimes their BP is not high because they haven't measured it, but they're not able to sleep. They're not able to eat. They can't function. And then it's like you keep going for work and you can't really get anything. You get my point, because this person is really not doing well. They could literally drop dead. So they need some time off to deal with that kind of thing. I would like a time when there's that recognition that, what's going on with our feelings and thoughts can actually affect our health. Yeah. And then, thirdly, I would like to see a situation where workplace wellness is considered something mandatory. Not just in the workplace, but also that companies prioritize wellness for their employees. Not just thinking about wellness in terms of Have you been to the clinic? Do you have a Panadol? But how are you doing as a person? Because there's so many things that are killing people. The alcohol, the drug, the gambling, people are getting into so much debt, the relationships, people are even getting to points where they have so much conflict. They're murdering each other, you know, there's so much gender-based violence. So looking beyond just your body temperature, if your employer can be concerned about your wellness beyond that part, I think that, you know, would have really developed in the mental health space.
Tell me a bit about Renaissance, your organization. I feel like what you just said is a key part of what you guys are trying to do out there. Tell me a bit about the company itself, what it's doing, what kind of services it offers, and how the journey has been of being part of Renaissance.
Okay, so Renaissance was started in 2016. We are going into our 8th year this year. Excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Almost ready to start school.
Yes. So I think that, so initially when we started, our vision was not as big. Our vision was let's just help some people who are failing to go to Chainama. And then, you know what I mean? Like, they feel like they can't go to Chainama until they're dead and dying.
Yeah.
So let's just help people like that. But as we were doing that, we realized that, you know, we can do more. Part of it because of what our clients themselves were asking for us to do. And it's interesting because when you look at some of the things we're doing now, we have moved from, first of all, one-to-one therapy was the only thing we did, and then psychiatry. But now we do full corporate wellness programs where we focus on even workplace culture. You know, we look at psychological safety in the workplace. How is that happening in order to optimize people so that they work?
Are those evaluations, like when you talk about wellness, are you going to companies to educate them on recognizing symptoms of employees having mental health struggles? What does that look like?
Well, we do different ones. So there are some who come one-off and they're just like, we just need a mental health talk. Just come tell us about mental health. What is mental illness? How can we look after mental health? And we do those one-off interventions for people. Some will actually have an incident. So critical incident management. Oh, we have a crisis. Somebody dropped dead at work and everybody in the office is kind of traumatized. We need support. How can we deal with that? So that's critical incident management. We sort of help with things like that, managing that kind of care. Then there are others who say, there's stuff going on in our team. People don't get along. There's masetting, there's spanners, which we don't really understand how things go on. It's like, there's a problem. Either there's communication or whatever. Then we go in.
Okay.
And then in that case, we do evaluations at different levels. Sometimes it involves one-to-one discussions, some surveys. We understand what's going on. Is there workplace bullying? Is it a culture thing? Is what's really going on? And then once we do that, we're able to design interventions based on what the problem is in that particular space.
Okay.
And then we have those clients who have said, we want you to work with us from beginning to end. Design our wellness calendar, help us to understand what's going on, help us to just be on top of this, not wait for a problem. What can we do to be proactive about health and wellness? And then we also do that.
Help them, okay. I don't want you to reveal some trade secrets, but how can I start... I'm a young entrepreneur, I'm a young manager, young executive. How can I start to think about wellness for my teams? Like, I want that to be a factor where my team is at its most optimum, as you described. How do I start thinking about that? Does that look like starting to have more frequent chats with the team? How can I start to put my team in that frame of mind?
Well, a couple of things. If you have a small team, I think that it would be possible for you to have a couple of one-on-ones every so often with them. So you can get to know each member of the team, especially if you have a small team. If your team is big, you might need to just do it on the leadership level. But get to know them beyond having conversations about work.
Yeah.
Some of the things that, like, at our place, some of the things I get to know about are just crazy things, like, oh, so-and-so bought a pet and they're dealing with this, and the pet cat got sick or something. So then we get to know about things
And
like
those
that.
things matter to that person.
Yes, and those things matter to that person. And also what that does is, sometimes we have overall rules about something. For example, no, if there's a funeral and it's your mother who died, then you can take 2 days. If this person died, then you can't take. And then if you know the people, you find that this person didn't even know the mother from the time they were. They don't care. But their aunt, oh my gosh, it has broken them. So it doesn't make sense for you to be telling me I can only take 5 days for my aunt, for my mom, but then for my aunt who is like my soulmate, the person who, then you start understanding people at that level and start understanding what they value and so on. So like I said, if it's a smaller team, it's easier to do that because you can customize some of that. If it's a bigger team, at least have those relationships with the team leaders so that the team leaders will then get to go beyond. Because I think one of the things that people try to avoid is I don't want to get into people's personal affairs because as a leader, then I'll fail to lead. But unfortunately, in this new generation of teaching and leading, that is just what we need to do. The people resource is like the most important resource. And so even when you look at, recently I did a course called 21st Century Skills.
Okay.
And one of the things they're talking about in 21st Century Skills is what they call uniquely human skills, like empathy, creativity, things which only a human being can do, because so many things are being done by machines and AI. So that's one. Another thing is just habitually have some team building. Like people spend so much time at work, it can't all be heavy every time I go to work. There has to be some things that make it a bit lighter, make it a little like, I feel we did a bit of fun things and so on. So it helps to break the ice. It helps to also change my theme for the workplace if I can do a few team building here and there.
Exercises. Yeah. In contrast, what in your experience does toxic work culture look like? Sometimes team dysfunctions arise from inappropriate work culture. Is that something you think you can speak on? Like, are there things that can say like, you know what, I don't think that's supposed to happen in a work relationship?
Yes, so a number of things. So one of the common ones is workplace bullying. And that's really hard because we think we're all grown-ups. Like, how would somebody bully you as a grown-up? So it's difficult for somebody to own up that they're being bullied because they're an adult. But it's also difficult to deal with in the workplace because sometimes it comes with a threat of loss of job or loss of promotion or loss of something. So workplace bullying and intimidation, toxic work culture. Also sexual harassment, it's a big deal, especially in a place where, people, I would like to say people in Zambia, I think they don't really understand a lot about sexual harassment. I remember having a conversation with a team of professionals and somebody brought up the issue of sexual harassment. And then this guy just comes to me, so am I harassing you now?
Like you didn't have to lift your eyebrows.
Like what in the world? What are you talking about? So things like that, like you can clearly see somebody, like people don't understand what that is. And in a world today where you see women are owning more and more of their space, if you have sexual harassment in that place, it becomes very toxic for a lot of women to work in that space. It's very difficult.
Do you find you have to tear down cultural barriers in people or perceptions as you are taking them through clinical practices or life coaching?
Yes.
Like clearly to me, the man who approached you and made that, he was very like, not that I'm judging him, but it sounds like he had a very there's fixed mindset about what he was talking about. Is that a common theme you find in people, like even those that come to you, like tear down those cultural?
Yes, and it's not just for individuals. Even in the workspace, people have a way in which they say, no, but when you're at work, people should just not do this. People should not come and talk about this at work. When you're at work is this. But, more and more there's a recognition that this is a whole person. So you can't just come and tell me that, if I'm working, I shouldn't think about my child who is, because, the attitude is, so if I have a child and I'm coming to work and I tell you that at 5, I need to go and deal with my baby. Your attitude is, look, when I was 24, I was staying up at work up to 21. There'll be no career progression if you don't you see my point. So there's a fixed mindset. Like, we never got Mother's Day. Then now you want to come. You're not serious.
You think you're too mother.
Yes. So that shifting of mindsets has to happen. That whole thing of, when I worked, the boss I didn't answer back. The boss will ask a question. Now you are challenging my thoughts.
Yeah.
Things like those have to change.
Also, I feel like, based on how you present yourself, you're a good mix between culture and being modern. So I think you're kind of in the right space to help people tear down the two, because as much as you don't want to throw away your cultural roots, you don't want to deny things that progress your mental health, right? Like, you don't just want to be stuck in the, you know what, this is how things have always been done, so I'm just gonna stick to this. So that's a positive.
Thank you.
We'll talk a bit about your book now. How Can I Make the Pain Go Away? Tell me about the book. Inspiration behind writing it. Why a book about making pain go away? Talk me through the book.
So I wrote this book because, firstly, I noticed that this was the most common question clients asked me. Like, at the end of the day, sometimes clients came because they were confused about what was happening, but sometimes they understood what was happening. I have lost my mother, and I know that's why I'm feeling pain. But, like, I'm feeling pain right now. How can I make this pain go away?
Yeah.
And so with physical pain, you can take painkillers. So with emotional pain, what do you do? What do I do when I feel pain? And I found that many times I had to keep answering the same question.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would answer and I would remember, I was like, oh, that one I forgot to tell them that other point. And then, oh, that one I told them those three I forgot. Then I said, okay, let me just compile these things into a little booklet. So my initial plan was a little booklet that would just talk about these tools. Yeah, but then I spoke to a friend of mine who has been writing books for some time, and he just said, no, you're not going to write a little booklet, you're going to write a proper book. So it was a compromise between writing a proper book that was not too heavy for people to go through before they can get something beneficial, and a booklet that was simple enough for people to get their takeaways.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all you people that have been asking her the same question, please get the book about how to make the pain go away. In my browsing through it, I haven't read it extensively, to be very honest. But maybe you can just run me down through some of the topics. I like this part about writing down. I discovered very early the power of writing things down. It was more from a professional sense. I was just amazed how everything I ever wrote down comes to pass, right? This is from a trying to be successful perception. Then from a managing yourself perspective, immediately you put something to pen, it's like you are giving the energy an outlet. What was the chapter on writing it down? Talk me through that.
So writing it down is about what is called reflective writing or journaling, therapeutic writing. Those are some of the other terms that I used. And it's an approach where you write down how you feel. And sometimes people are afraid to do that because they say it makes it real. But what that does is that it also defines for you what it is. So let me give an example. You know the story, I think people have given this illustration many times, of how you're in a dark room and you see someone at the corner standing there, and they really are standing there, and you're alone and you wonder how they got in. But when you switch on the light, you realize it's a coat that was hanging there. That's what writing down does. It's like, before you can write, you are feeling things. You're not really sure what they are. You're thinking things. You're not really sure what they are. But as you write them, you start defining them. and you start understanding. So what I'm really feeling is anger. Actually, yes, I'm angry about this. There's something empowering about being able to understand fully how you feel.
Okay.
Yes, so that's one of the things. But the other thing is also just expressing what's inside, like you rightly said. So being able to have this outlet where you can bring out what you're feeling, because for as long as it's inside, it's a lot of pressure. But if you can bring it out, you reduce the pressure. But the third thing is that, you know how sometimes somebody asks you for advice and you have the best advice, and then you can't give yourself that advice. And later, when you hear yourself giving advice, you're just like, oh, I wish I told
Why
myself.
didn't I do that?
Yeah, why don't I do that? You know, sometimes people even say, but you are giving me this advice. Why can't you use it for
For
yourself?
yourself, yeah.
So it's hard to do that if you're inside yourself.
Right.
But when you write, you externalize yourself. So you're able to see yourself from outside. And that's why sometimes you find that even before someone tells you something, your brain starts helping you, because you have
To
now
associate.
yes, you have now made it objective. So you are able to help yourself just by writing and saying this, because you know, at first you're just sad. Then after a while, if you write down, you say, okay, I'm really sad because I lost this money. Then you can even ask yourself, so, okay, but you know, is this not the only money? Like, come on, I've lost money before, and I haven't lost a limb.
Yeah.
So you find that you can do that. But if it's all inside, no, it's not possible.
Talk to me a bit about emotional tension emotional energy as tension in the body. How do you think about that? The correlation?
Well, I think that the body is a closed system. So unless anything leaves, actually exits, it'll just move to a different part. So if you have a lot of anxiety somewhere, which is not processed, then to become a frequent headache, can become diarrhea, it can become backache, can become anything, you know. So sometimes it becomes stammering in some people. So what's important is having that outlet. If that outlet is not there, then you can have those challenges.
Okay.
So in psychiatry, we call that somatic symptoms. There's a whole topic on somatization, and you have to know when you see somebody what is causing this abdominal pain beyond what looked like abdominal pain. So getting to, you know, the root cause in terms of psychological stress or pressure.
Was that your intention when you were studying the medical field? You've studied both the mental and the actual body. Were you thinking of tying those two when you were?
No, I didn't even know that they could be tied together.
Okay.
There were two separate journeys that I was having. One was outside work, and one was work. So when I was now doing this psychiatry and like medicine, actually, I remember, so anyway, I can tell you this. I actually used to think I would do obs and gynae.
Okay.
Obstetrics and gynecology, to do with babies and women's health and things like that. But when I decided to do obstetrics and the smell of the placenta,
It's like
I cannot live my life smelling that every single day.
it's not for you.
It's terrible, to say the least. Just be glad.
Shout out to
You don't have
surgeons
to.
that actually put up with it.
Yes. So I just said I can't. Like I tried to do this, I can't spend all my life doing this. But also the other thing is I like to see the sun. I think surgeons spend a lot of time in
closed doors,
not seeing the sun. I needed to see the sun. So, but I did get to a point where I just got in a crisis. Like I chose this medical career. What am I going to do with it? I thought I was going to do this. And then when I reached my 6th year, I had a rotation in psychiatry. And I was amazed to see for the first time that this stuff, which I like, is also in medicine. And from that day on, I made up my mind, this is psychiatry, this is what I'm going to do. And that was it. I never looked back.
Okay. You've studied quite a number of things. What type of legacy do you want to leave behind?
It's interesting when you put it like that, and I'm thinking maybe I should think a little more about that, hey? Maybe I haven't thought too much about that. I think I'm the kind of person who sets a goal and just wants to get to it and get to a goal and things like that. And I'll say to you, that's how I felt when I was given that award. The first award that I got, the Anakazi Banking Health Award. I think I was surprised that, have we reached this point when we have done this? In fact, so my initial plan when I just now got into private practice, actually not even private practice, when I got into mental health, was that we need to change the landscape of mental health in Zambia. We need to change how conversations are had about this and how people look at this. It needs to be more acceptable. And started on that kind of course, okay? So social media, public media, I did like written articles, interviews, went to places to talk about these things and things like that, just to help people get aware about this. And then, then I think I found myself at that point of the award, and it was a bit like, we've gotten here?
Like someone's actually saying what we're doing.
Yes. So I think that one thing I'm clear about what I would like to see happen is the standard of care in mental health. I would really like it to change.
Okay.
And that's the vision I have, to be at a point where we drove something to change in the way people look at mental health, in the way people look at life itself, and in the way that we can help people access the care. I think that I would like to be seen as somebody who pushed for the agenda for mental health in such a way that it actually bore fruit and had changes.
And who are some of the people that inspire you? People you look up to, people that light you up when you listen to them speak and you really relate to their messages?
So you will be surprised, because I think I get inspiration from scattered bits of people. I don't know if it makes sense.
I'm sure it's about to.
I hope so. One of the most inspiring people that I don't even know him, but I've been following his books for some time, is a psychologist called Dr. Henry Cloud. He's written a book entitled Boundaries. He's written several. The latest book I was reading from him is Boundaries for Leaders. But he's written a lot.
I've seen that book.
Yes. So he's written a lot of books about transformation and change. And I think he's, in a lot of ways, my role model. I see what he does. He's not like a forceful, aggressive kind of person. And when he talks, he just talks like this. But he produces a lot of stuff. He's written a book, Changes That Heal. He's written a book entitled Necessary Endings. So talking about key things that happen in people's lives, but helping people traverse through those things in very valuable ways. I would like to be the Henry Cloud of Africa. There's such a thing, because I see how he touches on very key things and things like that. I also like people like Oprah. She makes sure that something that she's passionate about, she infects people with it.
Okay.
So she creates a wave with things that she is
passionate about.
And that I like very much. There's a lady called Lisa Turkis. She's an author. She's written a number of books. One of the books that I've read by her is entitled Good Boundaries and Goodbyes. And she just shares her story about different experiences she has with life, friendships, relationships. I think at some point she was sharing a very painful divorce that she went through, how she started over from there. Then she explain different things about dysfunctional relationships and things like that. But I also learned from people like Simon Sinek when he's talking about work culture and how people grow and so on. So like I said, I have
different sources of inspiration. Okay. Different. I thought you were going to throw in one or two musicians in there. Boundaries is a very interesting thing. Do you find that a good portion of your clients, or even when you go to corporates to help them build wellness in their teams, is boundaries one of the things that you have to help them put up? Like, let's say in the place where there's corporate bullying, what does that? Yeah, what like? How would you define them, and what do you think are healthy boundaries for any normal person to have, like at the most basic level?
Yeah, boundaries are very important things. And I think one thing I've realized is that a lot of the problems we have in life is about boundaries. Either me thinking I can influence things in your life that I had no business knowing about, or me not taking responsibility for things in my life that I should really take care of, but I think other people should take care of.
Okay.
And so I think boundaries are about, first of all, focusing on things that you can control, taking responsibility for things that you're responsible for. Yeah. And taking deliberate effort on your own personal development. I think those are the basic things I would say about boundaries. And I think that problems usually come in because of those. So you and I are friends, and I'm not making any effort for my own personal development. I'm affecting you with my bad habits or bad manners. I'm not working on that. That will affect
and
our
that's an
relationship.
extension that a lot of people won't even think about.
Yes, that will affect our relationship. I keep borrowing money, I'm not giving it back. I keep saying I'll come tomorrow, I'm not, like, that is something I should take responsibility for. At some point, you need to put a boundary there that you can only affect me this far because I cannot control it. So that will affect the relationship. And so also, I think one thing that I realize a lot of people may have challenges with is that boundaries need to be renegotiated every so often.
Okay.
So if you are a responsible person, I should give you more access to me, right? Because you're a responsible
I know how to
person.
manage myself.
But if you're not, then your access should be limited. Otherwise, there will be abuse.
Okay.
Yeah, so if I'm lending you money, you're not paying back. If you keep telling me you'll come at 14 and you're coming later, you're affecting my hours, I will start to dysfunction because of you. So I need to put in boundaries so that I control how much. But if you're responsible, and I see I will give myself more to you because I can trust you and you will also help me to grow. So you're doing your own personal development and I'm doing my own personal development.
So sometimes we start to dysfunction, not of our own accord, but maybe what we're allowing within our space.
It's still our own accord because we're the ones.
We're allowing it. With that said, can you give me a 300? I promise I'll pay it back.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been a very, very insightful chat. I love the simplicity with which you've explained. Because of your accolades, I thought it would be somewhat technical, but I love the simplicity that you've explained things. The examples you give are very, very understandable to the average person. And I think anyone who can read How to Make the Pain Go Away would probably gain something very insightful. There's a workbook that goes with it.
Yes.
Talk to me about that as well.
So the idea behind the workbook was, I noticed that a number of times we read books, sometimes we read them just like that, but there is ways in which we can make this, you can get more from the book if you actually sat down to reflect. So sometimes it's hard to self-reflect.
Okay.
So I decided to develop some questions and some extra little tips that will help a person to really make the most of the tools that they're able to access from the book. And that's one of the reasons why whenever you buy the book, you automatically get the workbook, because the idea is not to sell the workbook on its own, but that you benefit from using the book with the workbook.
With the workbook, okay. Is it structured in such a way that for every chapter I have a space to write in the workbook?
Yes, so there's a space to write in the workbook. There are tips. Some of them include some extra reading that can be recommended, some extra places you can find some things. But every chapter has space, questions, reflection questions, and space in which you can write something.
Okay. This is a very good tool and framework for anyone maybe trying to manage uncomfortable situations in their life. So I would very much recommend anyone looking for the pain to go away to read this book. Where can they find it?
So it's there in Book World. You can find it in Book World. It can also be found in BM bookstores, which is at Levy. It's also in Ndola and in Kitwe. And soon it'll be on Amazon.
Okay. And how much is it going for?
It's 450 kwacha for the book, which automatically comes with the workbook.
With the workbook, okay. That's awesome. Thanks for finding the time to come through. It was very, very insightful. Like I mentioned, I'm really trying to help people cultivate success from the inside. And I feel like awareness and tools are definitely the right way to go. And experts like you are the right people to help guide that conversation. Are there some closing tools or ideas or frameworks you would give people out there to help? Either it's awareness or managing self, just things to have in your mind as you start to encounter challenging situations in life.
Maybe I'd just like to say a couple of things. One of them is saying by one of the speakers, or authors that I've come across, called Harv Eker. He says, don't believe everything you think.
You think, yeah.
Just to remind you again that your brain can play tricks on you.
Okay.
And it's important that you realize that. So right thinking is very important. Like, challenge your thoughts, especially when you're in this negative space. It's important that you challenge your thoughts. The other thing that I wanted to say is that nothing lasts forever, not even your pain. Like, sometimes it feels like some situations are not escapable, but there's always a way out. And just don't give up looking for the way out. Just don't give up getting the help and getting the support. I've seen people recover from things that I just could not even believe myself that somebody can recover from. And people do recover.
Okay. I guess that's it for today. That's Introspections Podcast Episode 4. Though there is one more thing. Our previous guests always leave a question for the next guest, and they don't know them, but they're just going to leave you a random question.
What question was
The
that
question
for me?
was, how are you going to use AI to improve your career? The previous episode was talking about the integration between using user behavior in marketing. So we talked a bit about AI. So their question was, your next guest, how do they think they're going to incorporate AI in their career?
So one of the uses that I've been thinking about AI almost immediately is to do with screening. Like chatbots, when you start the conversation
Right.
and you are trying to find out how you can help a person before you allocate them to the right person. I know in Zambia, people don't seem to like that. For whatever reason, they don't like pre-screening before the therapy. They would rather just go into the therapy room and talk to whoever it is. But I do know that there are others who would be interested in that. So that's one area that I've been thinking about. But also, I think it would help us a lot in being able to study trends and things like that, going on from, what we see in clients and follow up. Yeah.
Okay. What question would you leave for my next guest? It can be as random as possible, but it should challenge them.
It should challenge
Yes,
them.
just like this one challenged you.
Okay, so let me think. Maybe share a time when you thought that you would rather die than go through this situation.
That one's deep.
And how did you get out of it? Or are you out of it? Yeah.
Yeah, that one's very deep. I can't wait to ask the next guest. They will not see this coming. But it's good because then they get to step out of themselves and actually think about things differently. Again, thank you for making the time.
Hello, my name is Dr. Maria Akani. I'm the author of How Can I Make the Pain Go Away? And I had a chat today on the Introspections podcast. We are giving away 2 copies of this book to listeners who will listen to the podcast, share 2 takeaways from the podcast, like my page, Dr. Maria Akani, like the Introspections podcast page, and share the podcast. So any two winners will be able to get the benefits of all the secrets and tools of how to help you deal with difficult situations.